numbers in their last leagues, AHL or whatever.
Mhm.
And Cagnoni should be getting a look. He's just a little too small.
Yeah, well, he is pretty small, and I think he should get a look someday. But he's another one of those guys who didn't really show up at the prospect scrimmage the way I'd hoped. So.
There were a couple people, and I mean, we'll get into this because it's part of my hot take. But there were a couple people who I felt were almost treating it like a joke instead of a tryout.
I mean, it is kind of a joke, but yeah.
True. But like you could totally tell the walk-ons versus the people who felt like, yeah, I've got my papers, because like the walk-ons were like throwing hits and like going for like blue ice body contact and stuff, or blue line body contact.
Yeah,
and it was just like, oh, come on, dude. Everybody knows you're not getting a spot. Don't do this shit.
At least they didn't try spinning like Weissblatt over and over
Jesus, again. Ozzy.
The Anakin Skywalker of Sharks prospects. Try spinning. That's always good.
You're not Denny Savard, man. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ozzy was... Oh, my goodness, yeah.
What a terrible pick. Okay, it does look like we're live successfully, so that is good. So I am going to let everybody know.
But I gotta say, like, even reading and like watching all the prospect stuff and scouting stuff on Dickinson, and everyone saying, "Oh, his skating is great." Seeing that guy move, I was like, "Holy shit, that big boy can skate!"
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, that's about all he showed at the prospect scrimmage.
Oh, I disagree. I seriously disagree.
I mean,
there were a couple plays where, like, the average sort of not quite ready rookie would have just shuffled the puck on, where he held that like little heartbeat under pressure and then made the smart pass. Like, the sort of passes Burns does when he has time to actually look up ice and, just rifle that like boomer Esiason bullet off somebody.
Right.
Dickinson had that look, except his passes seemed to have touch and and like a thought to who he was passing to.
Right.
And like, let's face it, Burns and Carlson were our two best first pass defenders in the last 10 years now.
Probably the only other one I can even think of in our cup run was Boyle.
Shit, Boyle is still playing?
No. In our cup run, Dan Boyle. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, when we were in the play, when we were a contender. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Sorry, I guess I should say cup window.
Yeah, because it went Boyle, Braun, Burns, Carlson.
Yeah, but Braun was never a passer, really. Like.
No, but he was a better first pass than Vlasic.
I mean, my bunny would be a better pass, first pass defender than Vlasic. Actually, Vlasic's first passes are fine as long as they're to his D partner to distribute.
Yeah, as long as they're east-west to his buddy.
Exactly.
And his buddy is on their strong side and doesn't have to take it off backhand.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Oh man, I think it's gonna be fun to get into, because like Bysted, or I should say Beasted, he reminded me, and I think it's Clow that he reminds me of, like big body shark who always put the puck on net, but always put the puck on the goalie's crest.
I mean, you just described literally every Sharks forward ever. So,
but there was one who, like, I think it was Chloe, who was just like, yeah, he hits the net, but he always hits the goalie unless he goes backhand. And like Chloe would have that little lifting backhand he'd do, and that actually looked okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Shit, are you activating the Death Star?
You can hear that?
Yeah, or is that laundry?
That was our garage door below me opening.
Ah, okay.
My wife is heading out. Oh, there we go.
Do you have some information I can use to assist you, or are you just going to say it's not working?
Exactly. You are very soft, Mr. Alex.
Yeah, Alex, can you come into the same room as us? You know, stop talking to me from the kitchen down the hall. I would stop talking if I could hear you. Come into this room and say that to me.
Come into this county and say that to me.
Jesus, yeah.
Keep trying, sir.
No, yeah, you're still miles away. Oh.
Trying to figure out if I can put up a. You guys can hear me now, yeah? No, you're still like muffled.
Yeah, you're like 2 apartments away in a cheap build. But yeah, I can hear Ben's stomach louder than I can hear Alex.
God damn it, you could hear that? Fuck. All right, well, I will definitely need to be muting a lot, I guess.
Can you guys hear me better
now? You're like 1 apartment over now.
It's not getting better.
Quiet, or does it sound muffled?
Quiet. The walls are paper thin, but you're a couple rooms over.
Yeah, it's very strange that we can hear you, but not at all. That's not like normal microphone operation.
It's like you're a ghost without the flange. I love the bated silence of us trying to hear him. It's like a seance.
Exactly. Oh, there goes Alex.
Oh, I haven't looked up anything about the new coaching staff.
All right, he's back.
I'm kind of worried to look up the new coaching staff just to feel like I'm gonna be disappointed.
If you're talking, Alex, we're not hearing you at all.
Yeah. Nope. Cannot hear you at all if you're talking. Man, eat a sandwich. Have a muffin.
I don't have a muffin.
I'll drink some water. I don't know. I just had some nice chili garlic noodles with pork slices. Yum, yum,
Nice.
yum.
Damn. I wanted to add an image to play that said technical difficulties, but I'd have to actually pay for Restream to do that.
Yeah, no one wants to do that.
Damn it.
Man, this Predators team, like they were reminding me of something, and I didn't know what it was. I had to go look up the '94 Rangers Cup team,
Okay.
and I was like, "Oh, okay, good." There's like the overlap there is almost non-existent, so I made myself feel better. It feels like they're trying to buy a cup, and
Right.
and fuck it. Like I know this means nothing to you because you're even after all these years, you're a bit of a hockey noob.
Wow.
But but like looking at that '94 Rangers team and seeing Tony Monty being 23 on that team blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Because Tony Monty was quite a good player back in the day.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, he was. Actually, let me double check something on this because I think he's exactly the type of player you would have fucking loved. Never mind. He's 6 foot, so never mind. But like speedy fucking shoot first winger, always in the right place, just fucking like lights out. I think he played for LA though, so he can go fuck himself. Yeah, Chicago, where he did a lot of damage. No, who am I thinking on? Who was the fucking king? Yeah, fuck it. Yeah. Yeah, keep stirring that pot.
Producers, man.
Shit, man. You haven't been a producer longer than you were one now. Or are you talking about Alex?
I was talking about Alex, but
right.
let's see. So I've been teaching for 10 years now. I was a producer I guess I did stop being a producer for my last 2 years. So yeah, I actually have been teaching longer than I was a producer. It's true. Doesn't feel that way, but you are correct, sir. Aha. Okay.
Man, was I confusing Tony Monty and Granado? That makes me feel bad.
If you are, like, I can't help.
Yeah, because Granado is 5'10". He was also a shoot first scoring winger.
Let's see if this time we can hear Alex. Please, God, work.
And Granado was a shark for a little while.
Alex's silence suggests that it's still not working.
Man, and like, well, granted, he was old when he became a shark. But still, this Nashville team just messes with my head. Because Nashville's our Metropolitan, or what division are those
I think-
assholes in?
Are they in the Atlantic? I have no idea. The only division I recognize is the Pacific.
Exactly. The one division everyone ignores is the only one we can identify.
That's right.
Oh.
I don't know. They did the realignment, a few years back, and ever since I have no idea where
Yeah,
anyone
but
is.
fucking Arizona and Central. Like, I'm happy for
Excuse
it. but-
me, that's Utah.
Oh, right. Oh God, right. Oh my fucking God. They don't even have a name.
Sure, they have a name. They're the hockey club. Let's see.
Like,
Nashville is in the Atlantic. No,
yeah,
they're not.
yeah.
Where?
No, they're in metropolitan. Or no, they've got a
No, they're
central.
not
Yeah,
in
they're
either of
central.
those.
They're central.
They're Central. Okay, so they're still in the Western Conference. Okay,
Man, I mean,
bizarre.
in their favor, nobody else got better in that division.
Correct.
Like,
The Stars, the Jets, and the Avs all got slightly worse.
yeah.
The Blues got a little
I'm like-
better, right?
Did they? I don't think
I mean, I'm asking you as much as I'm saying it. I feel like the Wild maybe got a little bit better too, but I'm thinking more about draft picks maybe.
Yeah, I mean the problem with the Wild. Let me double check this because, like, yeah, the problem with the Wild is I just feel like they can never get that like team defense rolling.
Yeah.
Like they're a glass cannon team, and the moment they started getting choked out on goals, they couldn't do shit. Did the Blues get better? Let's see.
I don't know.
Man, Cat Friendly, I'm gonna miss you so much.
I've right.
I've started trying to use Puckpedia. It's just nowhere near as good.
Yeah. Well, they've got. I mean, I think they will get better because now.
Oh
they're
yeah,
the-
they have to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't have to, but they seem to have chosen to take this opportunity, which is good, right?
Nah, fucking the Blues did not get better.
Okay. I didn't really, I'll be honest, pay that much attention to what's the word I'm looking for? Free agency for anybody but the Sharks. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh.
You can see me in the room, do you?
Oh my god, we
There
hear
you go.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
do.
Yeah, perfect. Loud and
It's
clear.
It's Restream, which has totally different options depending on the browser I'm in. All of a sudden,
So
And
you
it's-
were in Safari, weren't you?
no, I was in Chrome, and then
Oh.
I tried Safari, and then I tried Brave, and then went back to Chrome, and I had to reset Chrome like 4 times, and then the options that came up were totally different from the options that were there before, which is fucking
Wait,
weird.
there's a browser called Brave.
Yeah, it's actually really good. It's a lot better than
The
Chrome.
jokes. I don't know. Sounds like it needs some courage to use that one.
Oh, no. It's got much better privacy than Chrome. Chrome's a resource hog on Macs. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
bad.
nah. Oh, Chrome is,
And I have a
Chrome
new,
is really bad.
I have a new, let
everywhere.
me tell you, I have a new Mac and it fucking destroys. It's insane how I got a refurb M3 Max and it runs my heaviest render or audio sessions with like 5% CPU. It's fucking nuts. How's the volume? Is it all right?
You're great.
Yeah,
now.
you're
Okay.
perfect.
Let me open up a bunch of windows because I didn't get a chance to do that.
Yeah, it's all good.
We're starting. Where are we starting? Remind me.
Well, so the last time we talked was to our fans, all 2 of them, was right after we won the first overall pick. So we haven't done the coaching hire, we haven't done free agency, the draft itself, or the prospect game.
Right. Yeah. Here, give me 1 sec.
So I feel like
Sorry, we did the coaching hire before.
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Not to do with anything Sharks related, but I am so here to watch Toronto Maple Leafs core 4 sobbing in press interviews because Berube was mean to them. Like, oh man, I can't. That collapse is it's taking its sweet time, and it is glorious to watch.
You did you paste the
I just put the YouTube link in.
this chat?
Yes, sir.
Too many tabs. Too many tabs. Man, I was really trying to avoid Chrome, but what are you gonna do?
Die, I guess.
All got better, didn't they? Jesus.
What, Colin? What?
Oh man, yeah, Montreal did get better.
What is this? Fucking Facebook. Give me a break. Ah, almost. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I want Toronto to miss the playoffs next season. I just, it's so good.
Fucking Toronto, man.
Like, I like Steve Dangle. I don't want his heart to explode, but like,
Are you sure?
I need that team to implode. Well, he seems over it. He seems to be on team blow it up. So like, I think watching that team just fucking eat itself would be good for him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they totally fucked up their. I mean, I think that firing their GM was not necessarily the wrong call, but who they hired to replace him was definitely the wrong call.
Well, it's Shanahan's the problem. Like, I agree with Dangle on that. Like, this has been Shanahan's squad for like 10 years, and yeah, like, this is Sharks related. Because did Shanahan get lucky, or was he good for getting the pieces that he got? Because like, I'm wondering, is Greer good or is he lucky?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the central. I mean, you know how they say it's better to be lucky than good. I definitely have thoughts on that.
Yeah, like I think luck gets you to the show, but doesn't win it.
You need a combo. All right. We can actually do this. 213 is the number, right? Correct.
Yes, sir.
Let me shift this over here real fast. All right. And here we go. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 213. And folks, you've been waiting for it for so long. That's right. It's the summer of positivity. For those of you who have thought you've been listening to therapy sessions, yeah, we read the reviews, our friends. Well, the Sharks earned that disgust, but they've turned things around excitement-wise, and we're going to talk about that and a lot of the moves that happened in this podcast. Don't be surprised if it's a little longer than usual. I'm Alex. Here with me, as always, is the Honorable Ben. What's up, Ben?
I have always been positive.
I'm sure Satan would agree with you there, Ben. And of course, you heard that laugh. And by the way, it sounds great. I don't know if you got a new mic or what. It's Colin. What's up, Colin?
Same old Mike.
Oh, look at that.
Same old Mike. New prospects though.
Yeah, it was the Sharks doing that to Colin all along.
Yeah, it turns out that Colin just needed to be excited for you to actually hear him on the podcast. Listen, a lot of news this offseason. We try to do these in clusters, which is why we didn't do it one for one. We're going to go through them, but let me just start by saying this. If you are a Sharks fan or an incoming fan, thanks to the Warriors doing a full court press PR campaign while they try to bury the fact that they're not bringing back Clay and probably on a decline, you should know that things are finally looking up. This is a really, really excited period in time. And let's talk about that because one of the really fun things about this NHL offseason is how compact, like within a week, you had the Stanley Cup finals and Stanley Cup awarded. You had combine, you had draft, you had RFA qualification, and you had free agency. And the Sharks did other stuff in between. And the first of the things that they did was they officially announced their new coach, who is, drumroll, Ryan Warfsovsky. Now, you might be thinking, wait, wasn't he already an assistant coach? Yes, he was, but lest we forget, he was interviewed for that head coaching job that David Quinn got. And it definitely felt like the organization at that point in time was trying to hold on to him, maybe saying, look, you're a little green now for the NHL level. but let's get you, under a coach. Let's get you some more experience, and then hopefully we'll hold on to you, and then maybe you'll be the next coach. And if you follow the Sharks, you know that the trick to becoming the Sharks' next head coach is to interview and not get the first job, and then they just come back around. They've done it with pretty much all of their last few coaches. So fair warning to the Sturm family, you might want to go ahead and buy a property up here, because 10 years down the road, you'll probably be the head coach as well. But guys, Ryan Warsofsky comes in. He has a press conference, very emotional guy, very much an emphasis on being a player's coach, really listening to the players, being very young as well. Now, there are some minor concerns that were brought up, which were, hey, wasn't he an assistant on like one of the worst Sharks teams ever? Yeah, fair. Wasn't he partially responsible for the defense, and were they bad? Yeah, fair. But what's your guys' read here? You guys excited, pumped, not pumped, unsure, jury's still out? Where are you?
It has to be jury's still out, because like essentially a brand new roster. It is a brand new year for the team. And like once we get into the roster and what's ahead for the Sharks, we can get more into this. We come December, we will see what sort of coach he is.
Yeah, I mean, that, and I agree with you. I know I brought up what your take. A little bit more, are you leaning towards excited here, right? Because he hasn't coached a game yet, right? And we do have a new roster call, and that's a really good point too that I want to bring. I'm glad you brought up, because the roster is like having turnover, as you would expect when you finish as poorly, but also because of where some prospects are, because of free agency, because of some contracts that they wanted to let walk. Like, sorry, LeBanc, you clearly didn't have a place on this team anymore. So there are a lot of shifts there, but general excitement in terms of having him specifically come in.
Well, is he the person who brought in Huda as an assistant? Because if he is, then I might be kind of excited, because Huda seems to be somebody who's been around like success and teams who have been trying to like reestablish their identity to achieve success. And if that's Warsofsky's call, man, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name so much. I apologize.
When I just want to say, when Alex said his name, I want to say Mike Wazowski, or say his name in that style.
I'm going to say Wars a lot, just to shorten.
Cool.
Warzy.
Cool. So if Warzy is the one making the call on who his staff is, and he brought in somebody with this sort of experience, then cool. And also, he was part of last season, so he at least has some experience of trying to talk a team up when there is no silver lining to look for. So let's see. But in a lot of ways, this feels like another Keefe, and Keefe had some interesting success in Toronto, but he wasn't able to turn the corner. So let's see, maybe this is the guy who comes in and does create a cohesive, successful group who rely on each other and who achieves good wins and start hitting the playoffs. Is Warsey the guy? We'll see. It's at least a year to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, listen, before I kick it over to Ben to get Ben's take, a couple of things I want to chime in on there that you brought up. One is we have pretty decent insight into the idea that he did pick his coaching staff, because Greer, in press conferences and interviews leading up to the hiring of his staff, noted that Warzy was in the process of interviewing and doing due diligence. So he clearly had some semblance of control, if not full control there. One of the things that I really liked about his press conference that makes him very I don't know, different maybe, was he noted in his interview afterwards with I want to say Dan Rusanowski and Ted Ramey, that he coaches with love. he doesn't believe in, I'm sure he will lay into you when you are doing god awful, as any coach likely will to some extent. But he made it very clear that he both in his young age and in proximity to the players in that regard, and just the way that he coaches in his style, the way he was brought up, that he believes in, more positive reinforcement, that he believes in supporting his players. He understands that there's a lot more going on in their lives than just the, what's happening on the ice. And to me, I don't know if you ever read Wooden's book on coaching. He seems to come a lot more from that methodology. And I'm not saying more compared to like Quinn or anyone else necessarily, but that is a style of coaching. And when you're talking about a team that is coming in, that is going to have a lot of youth on it, I don't necessarily think his age to me makes that big of a difference. I know the Sharks like to make a big deal out of it, and some fans have too. It's really more his approach. And that approach seems like it would be the right fit. Now, the one thing to add to that, to point out, and I think, Colin, this is where I'm kind of with you, obviously, in terms of the wait and see. He has got a coach. One, I love his enthusiasm. He seems to really want this. He seems very enthusiastic about it. He did not seem like a coach who was just kind of, there. Not to say that any coach comes in and isn't like excited to have that job per se, but you could tell that he really wants to prove himself. Everything he says and the way he says it, the way he carries himself really indicates that he's very much all in here. He really, really, really wants to be successful here, and he really wants to turn it around for the fans. I think the big question, and this is why I point out to the age again, because a lot of people will point to the age on this, and I don't agree. The question is he going to bring in new ideas?
Yeah, I actually, you reminded me of something that I am quite excited about, actually. He is not a coach from the school of Babcock.
Right.
Like, he's not a Babcock Bowman fucking disciple. So, like, that to me alone is super exciting.
I mean, there's still a question of what, when you look at last year, right? Last year the roster was a mess.
Go.
Last year the roster was a mess, obviously. But it certainly is fair for some people to go, well, how much of where the team was the coaches as a whole? How much of it was just Quinn? How much of it was the players? How much of it was a combo? Ben, I don't know what you're doing over there, Ben. It's crazy, but you go.
Well, so let's go back to 2 years ago, because I kind of hoped that Warsofsky was going to get the chance in place of Quinn.
Right.
We ended up with Quinn, but Wars was part of the interview process. That's why he landed as an assistant, given his background, given that youth and maybe different focus on or approach to hockey. I was hoping he'd be the head coach, then. He didn't get that opportunity. He spent 2 years working for Quinn. And so what I would say is I'm cautiously optimistic. And the caution comes from exactly as you guys have talked about. He's been coaching the defense for the last 2 years, and this has been an epically awful defense, particularly last year. How much was that because he was constrained by the talent on the ice, constrained by Quinn's lack of systems? He kind of seemed, as complimentary as Warsofsky was to Quinn in his press conference, there was that veiled sort of suggestion that this team needed systems.
Yeah,
which we were saying the entire year. And so maybe to some extent, I feel like that is also cause for optimism.
Can I point one thing about the defense before you move on? Because this is something else that's popped up a lot. And I think Sharks fans need to be a little cautious about this. And that is, there are a lot of people that will point to the fact that the defense was bad and that will point to the resurgence of Karlsson. And I've seen that attributed to Quinn. I've seen that attributed to Warsofsky. I got to be honest with you. Karlsson was healthy.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, it's entirely possible any of those people contributed to that, but I wouldn't necessarily just read one all-star caliber player's resurgence coming back from injury as necessarily being a coach thing.
Yeah. No, sorry, I agree. No, I agree with that. I don't know how much of Karlsson's resurgence and Norris Trophy campaign, comes from Warsofsky, but I also don't know how much doesn't or did, come from him. Maybe some of what was going on in the back room is why, Karlsson ruined our shot at what's it called?
Number 1 draft pick.
Yes, Bedard. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
What was going on in the background is not coming through anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, but what, yeah. But I hear what you're getting at.
And
right?
anyway, I'm cautiously optimistic because I think they could. There are a lot of guys they could have picked that we'd be super upset about, right? Like if they just brought in another retread, I think we'd be questioning. Has Greer learned anything? Where are we? Really going, etc. And this, at least to me, felt like one of the things I think has been a theme of this offseason is that Greer seems to be learning as GM, right?
Yes.
He's making different choices, and not different in like a, oh my God, what is he doing sort of way with Warsofsky. I feel like this was the correct logical pick in this particular case of maybe there were 2 or 3 other guys that we would be equally happy about. I think Colin I think you both have made a good point that the main thing for me is he's going to look like a genius right away just because of the talent differences that are going to be evident with Celebrini and Smith on the ice, right? This team is going to have no problem, I think, scoring goals anymore. I'm really still concerned about the defensive side, and I don't know what they do about that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that with the roster discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're all aligned. We're cautiously optimistic. We like the enthusiasm, but we obviously got to see what takes place on the ice. Now, another thing that popped up this last week that was really exciting was Will Smith officially decided that he was going to make a leap up to the NHL or AHL, kind of depending on where he's going to be. And so, that was another thing that a lot of us Sharks fans were sort of watching was, is this the year Smith and maybe a couple of other prospects like Musty come up, or is it not? Smith coming up is a good sign, and that actually leads directly into the next big deal with the Sharks, and that was they got Celebrini, number 1 draft pick. They had Joe Thornton come out and do the pick. They actually had his name and number on his sweater at the draft, which is extremely rare. I don't even know if that's happened before. I'd have to go back and really watch all the drafts. Usually it just says, Sharks and the year as your number. So, everyone's like Sharks 24. They got Celebrini. We'll bounce around here a little bit, but Celebrini sort of did a little bit of a will I, won't they, will I, or won't I kind of come up or go back to college. And interestingly enough, I love what the Sharks did, because what the Sharks did with Celebrini from the very first second they drafted him was they rolled out such a hard red carpet to make sure that he understood how embraced he was going to be if he made that transition. Like, skill aside, they made it very clear, hey, we think you've done, we think you're ready. He won the Hobie Baker, which means, he's already been the best in college, right? You can go back and win another one if you want, or you can try to win a championship, fine. But is that where you're going to grow your game? But what they did was they rolled out the red carpet. So not only did they have Thornton there, they had Bay Area athletes and celebrities basically reach out to him nonstop, telling him how excited they were for him to be joining the area, how great an area it is, how great a franchise it is. When he got to camp, they made sure to open the doors a little extra for fans to come in and really make a huge deal about him being there, get autographs, get all the excitement. They had he and Will Smith do the first pitch at San Jose Giants games and stuff like that. Basically, and on the ice in training camp, they had freaking Ricci, Jumbo, Marlowe helping out. So really, talk about a franchise really not just making their first, number 1 pick a good choice and not blowing it really, but they also did everything they could to make sure that he would turn pro, and he just announced that he is going to be turning pro. So before we get to the rest of the draft, let's talk about these 2 guys turning pro. Where does that put your excitement level as fans?
Okay.
Through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Wait.
Are we?
Hold on.
Are we?
Colin.
We're not going
This is
full
the
camp yet.
This is the enthusiasm.
Yes, enthusiasm.
Oh,
We're not
okay,
going. We're not
okay.
going. We're not going full. We're not going full camp quite yet because I want to get through the rest of the draft here.
Okay. Cool,
But just
cool.
but just from
Then-
an excitement standpoint, because you've got Will Smith, who also packed on some pounds, so he's bigger, stronger, and you have Macklin Celebrini, who, if you hadn't gone back and watched clips of him play, if you don't know anything about him, both these guys have already at their young age of 19 and 18 extremely high on ice hockey IQ. Like, these are guys who skate with their heads up. They know where the other players are. They're extremely creative. They're extremely dynamic. They have great control with the puck. They do have slightly different styles of play, which we'll point out when we get to the training camp area. But the Sharks, and listen, they're not guaranteed to necessarily be, I have air quotes going here, Sharks. It's impossible that it's possible they start some time in the Barracuda, maybe. But in general, having these two guys on the roster within the organization and saying they're ready to go at this young age, I think it's positive and exciting.
Like, I'll start with Smith. He needs to be playing top 6 minutes. Like, he needs to be on the big kid team. He needs to be getting used to the time and space and physicality of the Sharks, of the NHL. And oh my God, I can't wait to see that, because he's everything you said. And I mean, we knew he was good last season, and like I wanted to see him last season.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, oh God, let this guy cook.
I think if we're just thinking about retroactively at the draft, with the idea that the Sharks have Will Smith and he could go pro, Celebrini's, the first overall, we picked him, he could go pro. I think my enthusiasm for that is, if we're just talking retroactively, because they both had incredible college seasons,
Ceilings.
Yeah.
right? And building on, pre-draft year great seasons as well, right? And of course, Will Smith is in his D+1 having a great season, right? They've performed at levels that suggest potential greatness in the past. They've improved year to year. I mean, Will Smith and there was a lot of talent on his team, his college team, but they went to the national championship. They had a chance in that game. They looked great. He looked great. Like, the idea of having these two guys on the Sharks is exciting before we even get to what we saw in Dev Camp, for me. Because again, like, if you think about their comps, you're talking about like a Marian Hossa in Smith, and you're talking about a Connor McDavid potentially in Macklin from what they have done already.
Yes, right.
We don't know that they'll develop
Yeah.
into that, but what they've done in the past suggests that they have a high probability of being stars at the NHL level.
Yeah, they also have very high work ethics for themselves.
Yeah.
And you have two guys who are natural born leaders, and you have a Sharks team that desperately needs, whether you like Logan Couture or not, he's been injured. They definitely need energy, positivity, and leadership. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about having the two of them is they're a year apart in age. And they're former rivals too, now they're teammates, but like, they, not only are they coming up at the same time, roughly, even if we were talking about a year difference, even if Macklin had gone back for let's say a year, coming up roughly the same time, they're going to be able to grow and develop together. And not only that, but they know, like, the organization and the fan base and the press has made it abundantly clear that these guys are the 1-2 future punch for the Sharks. And one of the things that excites me about that is, it's rare that you get two guys like that at roughly the same time, roughly the same. I mean, again, a year apart draft wise, but you know what I mean. And what that does is it basically allows those guys to prepare. It lets them know, hey, like, you guys are our future. Yes, we'll have other players we're going to surround you with, but you guys are the leads here. And you already sort of have seen this because they roomed together at training at the prospect camp, right? So like, they're trying to become fast friends because they recognize, hey, like, we're gonna gel together with the Sharks for a long time. Let's start that now. Versus, I think where you have a player who's there for a while, then another player comes in much later. You're literally raising your two lead stars at the same time, and then on the periphery, which Ben, you sort of lightly hinted at there is they had pretty dominant seasons in the NCAA, but our other prospects that we have picked up in the last year or two also had very dominant seasons in their area, right? Musty is a really good example. So right now, the tide has sort of turned prospect-wise for the Sharks. Not only did we restock the cupboard, but a lot of those players performed really well last year. So when you get Macklin in there, and you already had Smith, icing on the cake. And the draft would continue to get good, right? Because we traded up from the 14th pick to the 11th pick. And there were a couple of defensive options there. We know we need defense. They end up getting Sam Dickinson, who is a phenomenal prospect. They could have gotten other prospects that were also up there, and there's certainly a discussion to be had. But right away, you now have your two of your future centerman captains, and you've got a top level defensive prospect who is likely, some people would say one, I would say probably more like two years away from bringing up. So again, you see the tide start to turn here, and the Sharks would go on through this draft, continue to make great picks. Their first pick of the second round was slipped out of the first round, right? How would you guys rank their draft in particular? Because in my mind, this was probably one of the best drafts, if not the best draft, the franchise has ever had. And it's not just me being excited for the timing. They made a lot of really great picks. They didn't do the thing that they usually do, which is take guys way off the board. They didn't trade backwards like crazy. They didn't do reaches. You know what I mean? It seemed like they made good picks. And it was a very mixed draft in terms of where people were falling and players were slipping as well, which helped a little bit. Best
Sharks draft ever so far, I should say. Best Sharks draft so far. Our first round picks will need to be phenomenal, like Nail Yakupov bus for this draft.
Why you got to manifest?
Yeah, why do you even bring that?
Oh, you're the worst.
For this draft
fans,
to not be the best.
You know who to turn to when this goes south, right? It's Colin.
I'll screw you guys. I'm just saying, everything you said, Alex, they chose, possibly for Dickinson and later best player on board draft, pick. And I know, Ben, you've got some opinions about that, but
I'm not that far off on your perspective here. I just have a subtle addition to it. I think I would add, but keep going.
There was no point in this draft where I'm scratching my face and being like, no, why'd you do that? And I've been spouting that they were going to trade up using Bordy as collateral, and they didn't need to because they had a fantastic pick at 11 with Dickinson. So again, is Greer good or is he lucky? And Ben, take it away because I think you got more nuance.
Well, so I think the conversation around the draft started the day before, right, when the Sharks moved up 3 spots in a trade with Buffalo, which I think our conversation ended up sort of it felt like they didn't need to move up 4 until they had more information as to what was going to happen on the day,
right?
But they didn't give up a lot. And what they clearly were trying to do is make sure they got in on one of the top 3 defensive prospects, right? It felt like they were maybe focused on Yakupchuk because he had the size and maybe a little bit more size. Not that Dickinson is small. Dickinson's not. In fact, the Sharks passed on a probably better defenseman who was slightly smaller at 11, meaning Zeev. But that doesn't mean the Dickinson pick was bad. I think, in fact, the Dickinson pick was a very good one. I think that they maybe missed some value by going for the slightly bigger dude. But I'm stoked at getting a guy like Dickinson because if you look at the teams that picked ahead of them, you had guys who shouldn't have been going where they did, like Seneca, Tej went too early, etc., going because of either family or even more emphasis on size. Like Anton Silyev is... him going off the board and Dickinson still being there was a blessing in disguise, I think, for us.
I think part of it too, though. This was a I don't want to say unusual draft, but compared to the last couple of years, there really wasn't consensus after number 1, right? And so I think what you saw was a lot of players sort of slip up and slip down, not because they were bad or there was necessarily concern about them, but because there really wasn't great concern or there wasn't great an agreement in terms of like this person's absolutely 2, absolutely 3, absolutely 4. There was a lot of like, hey, these guys are in the top 10. Some skew a little higher in the top 10, some skew lower, but it all kind of depends.
Yeah.
And I don't think the combine really shifted that at all. In fact, if anything, what probably happened at the combine is, as the teams got a better look, they said, actually, this is more the type of player we need here because there isn't really consensus there. So that worked in the Sharks' favor.
Yeah.
Because once the Sharks had that number 1 pick and you knew they were taking Celebrini, then, it opened up the doors for them to get a lot of guys who were really good. Now, this draft is not as heralded as, let's say, last year's draft. That's fine. But the Sharks also didn't need that, right? They needed a guy like Sam Dickinson or any one of the D that fell right around them. Most of them would have been a great option.
I think if Parekh had fallen to them, he would have been a great pick. I think they would have passed on him too because he's 3 inches shorter than Dickinson. But look, what I would say about the Sharks draft is at every spot, except for maybe the Hellenius pick, or Wallenius, sorry, the Sharks took a very good choice for their position. Right?
Yep.
They got Chernyshov when they shouldn't have. That's fucking awesome, right? That guy fell out of the first round. He was still there at 33. Game on. Solid Wallenius was maybe a slight over draft by the Sharks, but at every other position, the Sharks took a guy who profiles well for the place he was taken when you also account for size. Right?
Yeah.
And they fit a need.
At every
they fit a need this team has.
Yeah. In every case, the Sharks did leave a better player on the board, probably, but they didn't reach 3 or 4 rounds for a guy who was 6'7", like you saw a couple teams do, right? And to me, that's a successful draft. They, within the context of the best players available, they took one of the top 2 or 3 guys with size in mind at each place. And I don't think you can argue with that, right? What we would have seen in the past, what made this very clear this was not a Tim Burke draft, was that they weren't doing things like Anaheim did or Ottawa did, where they picked a guy that nobody expected at a particular spot. It seemed to think that they knew better than everybody else and also better than points profiles for where the guys are, and that's a good thing, right? There seemed to be there was a definite process that was clear in their draft choices, right? They took one of the best players available, accounting for size. And I'll take that over what we saw in the past.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We skipped a couple of things here kind of coming into this. Will Smith was not the only player to sign their 3-year entry-level contract before the draft. The other one was another defenseman, right? Do you guys know who it was? You guys remember?
Luca Cagnoni.
You got it, Luca Cagnoni, who had a he's a smaller guy, had an amazing season in his league. And then in the lead up, so there was some funkiness that went on before the draft that kind of had people scratching their head, right? And the big one is the New York Rangers put Barclay Goodrow on waivers. The San Jose Sharks claimed him, and Barclay Goodrow had a no trade clause, and the Sharks were certainly on it. And so there was a lot of like, hey, what's happening from every direction, right? In terms of like, why would the Sharks need Barclay Goodrow? Why would they want a player that doesn't want to be here in the first place? Hey, isn't that technically, CBA circumvention to some extent, even though it's illegal? Like, can you really take a guy who's got a no trade clause and go, we got a way around that? Which, let's watch to see what happens with that as we get closer to the CBA negotiations, because it nullifies no trade clause. Sharks being Barclay Goodrow, and then after that sort of head scratcher, they make a pretty good call. They end up acquiring Jake Wallman for a 2024 second round pick for future consideration. So what the Sharks have basically done is they kind of just got 2 players for free. Isn't it like a little?
They absolutely did, and then they re-signed Kunin.
Yeah.
Like
But Wallman,
like-
but like so Barclay Goodrow, a little bit of a head scratcher there. And there are a lot of people, me included, who thought there's got to be a little bit more going on. That's either helping. There's some back scratching going on between these 3 teams here in order to open up cap for the right move for the Rangers, or something else going on. But here's the deal: Wallman's great. He's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
Sharks got a good defenseman in, which we so desperately need, because even if you have Macklin and even if you have Smith. And even with the players who are departing on offense, which allow players to come in on offense, not a lot of players departing on defense, really. So Sharks need to improve their defense, and they do, and it costs them nothing.
Which by the way, it's also weird because it's supposed to be against the rules.
Yeah.
To get a player for future considerations, right? And they even had in the case that it happened, basically the league was like, we decided this one was fine.
What? Can I tell you what I thought was weirder than that, though? And this is why I bought into, like, there's got to be something more going on.
Yeah.
It wasn't even Wallman coming in. I mean, he is a good player, and that is unusual. But they also got a second round pick.
Yeah.
Like, who goes? Hey, we need you, because look, it, like in the Goodrow situation, that could be a little bit more of we need someone to take this guy off our hands, and then we'll make it later. This one's like, hey, not only will we give you someone pretty good, but would you also take a draft pick? That's like the negotiation there must have been, that ass backwards thing where it's like, how about Wallman for future negotiations? Yeah. Fine. We'll also throw a second round pick. Well, I already said yeah. Are you sure you want to do that? You want to give me a second round? Okay.
Here's my headcanon conspiracy on that one. Greer sent Yzerman like a pound of really good California weed. And it was just it was just like, hey man, let me know when you break that stuff open. And he just called him right then. And he's like, hey, what would be a great idea?
Yeah. What? Who? Huh? The Sharks made a couple of other picks that were more related to the draft in terms of draft picks, but the other trade that they made before the draft started that gave them a player was they got Carl Grundstrom from the LA Kings for Kyle Burrows. So the interesting thing about Carl Grundstrom is, why do you need him if you just got Barclay Goodrow? Because what the Sharks are starting to do at this point, which is something they did the last time, or since Greer's been here, he kind of keeps doing, is he keeps kind of pulling in a whole bunch of 4th liners, maybe 3rd liners, and really clogging that kind of pipeline. And so when you do look at the Sharks and their prospect pool, there's different philosophies. Okay, there's sort of 3, maybe there's more than this, but 3 basic philosophies in the NHL in terms of line composition, right? One is the 3. One is your player, line and space ranking is based off of your player ranking, right? So like your best players are your first line, your second best players are the line, but whatever. Then there's the super old school mindset, which is that on the first 3 lines, and then that 4th line are grinders that are going to go out and just hit things and wear a team down, pick fights, whatever it is, enforce your line, right? And then you've got a little bit more of a modern stance, which is who really cares what number the line is? It's about finding balance so you have 4 lines to play against, because that's going to create a lot of mismatches. If you have 4 good lines versus, let's say, three good lines, or 2 good lines, 1 okay line, and a line that's just out there to hit things and not actually do anything, why would you do that? So we're sort of in this phase now where we're starting to get the prospects. They're starting to get in the position where they have earned opportunities. Guys like Gushin, Bordeleau, obviously, and a couple of others that have been down in the AHL. But then you also have Smith coming up, and you have Madden coming up, but you still have Greer sort of tying his hands again and bringing in things that are going to clog those spaces. Now he believes, as he's made very clear, he believes in a competition. So he always wants to kind of make it as competitive as possible to earn those spots. The flip is we didn't necessarily see under Quinn. Who knows if that's Quinn or Greer? It sounds like Greer and Quinn didn't actually associate as much as people thought based off of exit interview and exit conversations. But we didn't necessarily always see that reflected, right? Guys like Gushin, I think, is a really good example. Is going to come up probably a lot in our offseason and in camp, in early season podcast. That's a guy who earned more of a shot than he was given, but other guys were played in front of him. So when you start to see these players come in, there's a little bit of concern there. Did you guys have any thoughts about those three, I guess, acquisitions between Grundstrom, Goodrow, and Wallman?
Wallman
Ben.
great. Yeah, Wallman great. It felt like the Sharks just kept trying to upgrade over Cunnin. With first they got Goodrow, who's somewhat better than Cunnin, and then they got Grundstrom, who is better than both of them.
But they made it pretty
without
clear, though.
without also getting rid of the other two players that they were clearly upgrading from.
Right,
So,
right.
so now they have like 4 Luke Cunnins for the price of 15, which is always good.
Yeah, now there is a little. One of the things that you also need to remember about the Sharks this offseason is they need to get to the cap floor, and for this year and next year is a concern too, because the cap's going to go up again next year, it seems like. So you're going to see them overpay for stuff. But I thought it was weird only because they made it pretty clear that they were going to re-sign Luke Cunnin, and Luke Cunnin made it pretty clear that he wanted to re-sign. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like if you valued that player as much as they seem to, there was like no risk of him going anywhere. So to bring 2 more of him in was like,
Yeah, with all the so two things about that. Like Cunnin is terrible. He might be one of the
Yep.
worst players on NHL ice. And to say that an NHL team needs more Luke Cunnins, as Coach Warzy did say, suggests that you don't know what you've got with Cunnin. They talked about how his leadership is so important, right? Making it sound like they're re-signing him to make him the C. Then they pick up these other players that look just like him, and then
Yep.
they only sign him to 1 year. So to me, like that whole process of re-signing Luke Cunnin and building this roster with a bunch of fourth liners again was really sort of schizophrenic. I don't get it. Like once you have Grundstrom and once you have Goodrow, what do you need Cunnin for?
I get it, Ben. And
Okay.
I said as much on our Discord, and it's one of two things or a combination of those two things. Either Greer doesn't know what he has with players yet, and he hasn't figured it out, or he doesn't have confidence in what he has or hopes he has. And so I think what you're seeing is you're seeing a general manager, again, he's learning on the job, and he's learning relatively quickly in a lot of respects. He's still making the mistake of like every really awesome move he makes 1 or 2 head scratchers there. But if you really believe in your prospect pools of where they are in development, these are not moves that you are making. So either he's still not sure what he has, or he's not confident enough in their ability as of this minute right now, which again, I think I'm going to pick on Gushin again here. We don't know whether that's Greer or Quinn or what the situation was, but that's a guy who deserved a much better look and also deserves a really strong look in camp and not having all the spaces ahead of him clogged, to at least give him a shot. And then if it's not working out and you feel you need to pull something in, fine. Pull something in at that point in time, right? Give these guys a little bit of space to get some low minutes. Now, again, I brought up the line philosophy because some people believe that, well, you can only bring those guys up if you're bringing them up on like the first or second line. I don't subscribe to that philosophy. I think you can give them sheltered minutes, lower lines, and have them earn their minutes as they kind of go up, or that line earn their minutes as they go up. But I think that's why he's done stuff like that. I think he's excited, but I still think he's mass accumulating some of these pieces because he's really not sure exactly what he has yet. And that is the one thing that I would say is a little concerning to me in his GM tenure so far. It's not that he's not making some great moves to bring in good guys. That I think is great. I think he's doing a good job of it. He got out of some bad contracts. I think he did a reasonable job of that. But at this phase, I would hope that either through scouting or your development coaches, you would have a much better idea of where these guys are and how ready they are. And unless the coaches are coming in and going, look, guys like Bordeleau, guys like Gushin, they're not as ready as you think they are. I don't know. It feels a little weird to me.
I mean, we have this like you didn't even bring up Graf, by the way.
Yeah,
who
right.
Is should also be getting a look, but like he's created this massive jam on the forward core. Meanwhile, Jan Ruda is our only right-handed defenseman. And like and granted, Greer said he did not want long-term big deals in this free agency. And all the righty defensive players, all the decent defensive players, all signed like 5+ year deals. So
I-
clearly we weren't getting any of those. But
I've been pretty surprised that Ferraro hasn't been moved yet. But then again, there have been a lot of interviews with the players and coaching staff that have indicated that they recognize that he shouldn't be on the first line. And so I think part of Wallman coming in is maybe to push him down to that second line. Now, whether or not
I actually disagree. I think he should be in the first pairing.
this
But
is
they,
good.
but they,
For
but
the
yeah,
CUDA.
no, bro, sure. My point, no, listen, I don't disagree with you either. I don't think he ought to be on the roster. I think we could
Yeah.
do a lot better. But my point is more, they seem to understand that he's getting too many minutes. Now, the disagreement that they have, I think, with where we are is we're like, he shouldn't be getting any minutes, and they're like, if you push him down the lineup, he'll be better or fine. If he's like a third line pairing, okay, I guess. I don't think he's second line pairing either. But yeah, so the club plays. Free agency hits, guys. Free agency hits, and they bring in really, I would say, 2-3-ish players of note, right? The biggest one is Tyler Toffoli, who's obviously there to make sure that Macklin
Good
or
guess.
Eklund or Smith has someone to pass to who can actually score. And Tyler Toffoli, his wife's from Monterey. So they're happy to be back here. He wanted to come here. He was open to it. It's a good use of salary for them. Yes, he's on the older edge, but he still plays really well. And then they brought in Alexander Wenberg from the New York Rangers, which,
Also good get.
interesting. Yeah. And then they brought in Lucas Carlson and lower down the list, I think Jimmy Schultz. And Carlson and Schultz are much more likely to be AHL players or bridge players, if anything. Afanasyev, I'm going to blow that name. He actually he's signing over in the KHL, so he's not actually going to be with us this year. They got and then they signed some of the people that they brought in, right? Like Ty Dellandrea, Carl Grunstrom signed, Podorowski signed. And then Macklin Celebrini, as we talked about, signed. So let's push ourselves into training camp now, because all this is happening again in a week span, right? There was training camp for a week here. Macklin Celebrini actually left Vegas early to get skating in. Love that work ethic. Love that enthusiasm and excitement. Again, he was sort of weighing whether or not he was going to go back based off the camp. The Sharks made sure he didn't go back. And then there was the prospect scrimmage, which has, a very unusual format in the chase for the Marchment Cup. There's, 5-on-5 and then 4-on-4 and then some 3-on-3. I certainly learned that our prospects have no idea how to play 3-on-3. That's fine. It's probably the least exciting 3-on-3 I've ever seen in my life. But who stuck out to you in training camp and in the scrimmage? And I want to set the stage with one major thing that I noticed. And it was actually really interesting and really exciting. And that was, two things, actually. The first is Will Smith and Celebrini have radically different games.
Yep.
Both are incredibly smart. Both are incredibly fun and creative with their passing. Both can shoot. Both can pull their team forward. And you saw that. Like, no question, Smith was really leading his team. No question. There was a comeback at the very end when they were down 7-2. Macklin Celebrini knew he was the guy, and he very largely orchestrated a lot of that comeback, stayed on, didn't want to get off the ice and all that. But what impressed me was Will Smith is fast and shifty. And we've heard that before, but didn't really get to see it. Fast and shifty. But Celebrini's got that Joe Thornton matrix vision going on where he gets the puck and he just slows the entire game down. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, he controls the tempo of the game. Hey, is everyone getting too hyper? Macklin brings the tempo down and controls the play. So those two guys, almost a little bit more like something closer to like a Marlowe Jumbo in that regard. One's speedy and fast with their style of play. The other one is very controlling of the game. And the other thing that I really noticed, which I got so excited about, more than I should, because I think I know what's going to happen, and I don't think it's going to make me super excited, was Will Smith and Quentin Musty have instant chemistry. Like, instant chemistry. Those guys are so on the same page. And I'm a Musty fan. I honestly thought with last training camp, he played really well. I thought he earned a spot. They sent him back down. This year, because of his age, he's either on the NHL squad to start or he's back down. I hope he gets a spot. But what are other things that you guys notice, or if you want to talk about those same things, go ahead.
All right. Well, I mean, Alice, of course you like musty things. You're old. So
Can I tell you something? Shoresy season 3 drops, right, and it takes place in Sudbury, and they're using that arena, right, of the Sudbury Wolves.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the exterior shots, they haven't bothered to replace the logo. They show the Wolves, and every time they would do an exterior shot, I point to my wife and I go, "That's where Musty plays. That's where Musty plays. Musty plays right there."
Okay, buddy. Yeah, okay. So Smith and Musty have me so hyped because both of those guys can stick handle in a phone booth, and that is the skill you need in the NHL. You need to be able to do something with zero space, and you need to be able to do it fast. All right, here comes my hot take.
Oh no.
I was a bit underwhelmed with Celebrini. So I feel either he was just sort of phoning it in and not taking the thing seriously and just sort of goofing. But like all the comparisons, all the like, oh, this is the sort of player he's going to be. I'm like, I kind of want him to stay down and not go into the NHL this year.
I see where you're coming
I don't
from.
think he's big enough to play that slow down style.
I
just
see where you're coming from, and I know where that concern comes from, because as I was watching that prospect scrimmage too, the first thing I noticed was that, and not that they necessarily always deserve that comparison, but it's going to happen. Will Smith was highly visible, and in the first maybe half of that prospect scrimmage, Celebrini wasn't. But the second that the need really arose, Celebrini stepped up big time, I thought. Now, one thing you have to remember about Celebrini, and again, you can compare with Will Smith, who's not necessarily in a different situation. He just turned 18, right? So, and this is an exciting but probably a bit of an overwhelming experience. Everything the coaches have been saying and every other clip from practices leading up to that scrimmage, he's looked really, really great. The only concern that I would have, and honestly, it's the same with a lot of these young guys in general, is just making sure that they don't put themselves in a position to get injured. Because one of the things that came out in the Marchand interview afterwards was, he pointed out one of the things he keeps telling them is, this is not college, right?
Yep.
So what's going to happen is you're going to have guys who are 10 years older than you, 15 years older than you, who are going to be more experienced, potentially faster, definitely stronger. And so, you need to be real smart about how you're playing in the zone. You have your head down, you're going to get hit hard, and you're going to have a target on your back too. But again, I think it was just because one end was so visible. Like the team teal in that prospect scrimmage just gelled as a unit a lot faster and better than I think that the white team did. But again, this is a small sample size. And the one thing I would really caution, both bad and good, that fans have got to keep an eye on. It's awesome to be excited. We should be excited. There's a lot to be excited. But just understand that when you're watching a prospect scrimmage, especially if you've never seen one before, or you're watching training camp, or you're going to practices, this is not the NHL. And so you do need to have a little bit of a tempered expectation and a realistic thought process how you're evaluating, because you can see a guy who shines in the prospect scrimmage and go, hey man, that guy looks effing awesome. He's our new star. But he's also playing against guys that are at or below his level. And that is not necessarily the level of play going up. That's not to sound defeatist. It's not to sound negative. It's just got to be realistic. Like, guys will stick out in these practices and scrimmages. That does not necessarily always mean that player is ready for that next level or 2 levels up. You just got to watch that a little bit.
So like my case for being a bit underwhelmed Celebrini, and this sort of applies to Dickinson too, but Dickinson really impressed me, but my expectations for him were way lower. Celebrini played like somebody accustomed to space. And like you watch Smith and you watch Musty out there, and they're handling the puck, getting the puck, controlling the puck with no space around them. Like the puck is in their skates, the puck is in between somebody else's skates. They are moving with speed in tiny little spaces. Celebrini keeps pushing the puck way out away from his body, and I'm like, that is a player who's going to get caught reaching.
Yeah,
and
but he
is
control. Yeah, but
going
he,
to get
he controls
reps.
the play and controls the tempo. And what I noticed towards the end of that game was he was making his own space where there really wasn't space,
Yeah.
and he was harder to muscle off the puck than I initially thought. Because when I first saw
He
him
was
take the ice,
he was rough on the boards. Like
He
he
was-
was tough on the boards.
he looks 12, right? So like when you first see him, you go, this guy's gonna get muscled off the puck immediately. And it felt like in the beginning of the game he was, and then the second but I think what I appreciated about Celebrini is that you could see him like just with the eye test, you could see him adjusting very quickly to what was going on. The other thing too is the only reason potentially, I think, that you would send Celebrini down is if you felt like he needed to gain strength, because he really doesn't have anything else to gain.
Can-
He already won the Hobie Baker in the NCAA.
Yeah.
You could say, well, he didn't win a championship. Fine, that's a team thing, but you can't get better than the most valuable player in the league, right? So better to have him up. Now, the question is, do you put him in the NHL right away?
Yes.
Do you figure out the AHL? No,
Yes.
I know this is just a
Look, neither of these guys is going to sniff him in the AHL. You don't
I
put
hope
a number
not,
4
yeah.
pick and a number 1 pick
I hope not. Yeah.
who came out of college, into the AHL. So that's just not going to happen. I'm sure there is an agreement that that's not going to happen. Otherwise, they would have stayed in college.
I think so too. Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. I am somewhere in between both of you on Celebrini. I think I agree with Colin in that the first period and a half, Celebrini didn't seem to have chemistry with the guys on the ice. You had instant chemistry with Musty and Smith. I suspect what that actually is both of those guys will have instant chemistry with whoever their line partners are, because they're just that good.
Yeah.
There was no equivalent Musty on Celebrini's team.
That's
So
true.
he had-
He was passing
he
the
had-
pylons.
He had to figure out how to make use of Haltonen and Bistedt, which was a different challenge. That's what I would say to that.
Well, one other thing, real quick, just to point out too, Smith and Musty have been to one of these before.
Mhm.
Celebrini has not. This was his
Yeah.
first one.
And that's the thing too. Like one of the problems with the prospect scrimmage is you shouldn't take anything away from it, to be perfectly honest, because it's a complete it's not an NHL game.
No.
It's not with NHL talent. It's not an NHL format. This is good in a couple cases, because I think Dickinson, I disagree with Colin a little bit on Dickinson. I think Dickinson looked lost in this game. I was hoping to see more from him. I don't think that's a problem for various reasons. I just wanted to see more. Same with Cagnoni, who is invisible in this game.
Yeah.
My problem with Celebrini is the way Alex put it, is he was kind of invisible for the first period and a half. But after that first period and a half, Celebrini took over that fucking game.
Yeah.
And that, to me, whatever kind of game it is, when a guy turns things around like that, that suggests good things. So
Yeah.
so I would say my general takeaways from the game is I was super impressed with Smith and Musty and Celebrini. Obviously, I'm intrigued by Polkamp because
Sam's going to bring him up.
he's either Mark-Edward Vlasic as a forward, except he's
No,
a defenseman.
no.
Mark
Here's
Eddie
why-
Pickles, as I like to call him.
No,
noted-
here's-
noted power
Wait,
forward.
wait, wait.
Let me
Here's-
finish my thoughts, Alex. God damn it! You can tell me about Polkamp in a second. You get to monologue for hours. Let
Yep.
me have my monologue.
That's fair.
The other guy was Haltonen, who is exactly what I hoped he would be, based on what he showed in the playoffs in juniors last year, which is he's a guy who's figuring out to get to his spot and use his shot. I was also sort of impressed by Bistedt and Edstrom on a lower level each, particularly in the third period with Bistedt, the second period with Edstrom. I liked what I saw from both of those guys, but not nearly at the same level as Smith, Musty, Haltonen, Celebrini, and Polkamp. And what I was going to say about Polkamp is he's either Mark-Edward Vlasic, maybe less defensive, but with the same instinct of becoming noted power forward whenever he can. He could also just end up being Mario Ferraro. So, incompetent chaos agent. Last thought for my side is Corona looked great in his period.
Yeah.
There.
Well,
I didn't. I was.
Well,
I had a different take. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just on Haltunen. If somebody can tease that guy to tip, oh my god! like I want Haltunen to get comfortable in front of the goalie and tipping tipping pucks.
He's all
But
about his shot
one-timers,
though.
his skill, right?
Yeah.
Like,
his shot
you want him in-
is amazing, but if you get that guy where he's the offside winger and a shot is coming from opposite side from him and he can crash the net to tip and like shove pucks in, like I don't know if you saw his highlight reel from college or whatever. He was just shoveling in greasy goals left and right, and a guy with his frame, with his reach, who can shoot and then also tip, like, oh my god, yes, please.
So two disagreements with and that's why we have this podcast. Two disagreements and one note. The first is Paul Camp. Well, actually, I'm going to count this disagreement too. You know why I don't see him as either Ferraro or Vlasic? It's strictly because that guy is so effing fast. I had to double check his position because the goals he scored, I was looking at that and I'm like, oh, is he a wing? I thought he would. I didn't think he was a winger, and I had to go back and I was like, oh shit, he's defense. That guy is fast. He's one of the fastest guys on the ice half the time.
That's why I think he is more likely Ferraro. Is he's a defenseman who's out of position all the time.
Sure.
That's kind of the way.
And that brings up my second disagreement with you was Sam Dickinson. Not that I disagree with your general assessment of where he is, in terms of development and all that stuff. More that I thought Dickinson was highly visible. What I noticed though
right.
was that Dickinson was highly visible in the offensive zone.
Yes.
And oftentimes either driving the play or coming
Agree.
up almost as if he was a winger when he wasn't one.
Right.
So but I will say this. My biggest critique of Dickinson in that scrimmage was really that he got, for his size, he got muscled off the puck a lot more than I would have thought.
Yes.
Played super
That's
small.
That's exactly right. He was visible. You're right, and he was visible in ways that suggest that he needs another 2 years in college to grow up and learn defense. Right.
Yep.
He was getting stripped of the puck. He was not playing particularly strong on the puck, and again, like, I'm okay with this, right? Because Dickinson was picked not just because they see his defensive potential, but because he piles up points from the defensive side. Like your upside with him is, he may not be an offensive defenseman at the end of the day, but he will be a defenseman who can distribute the puck while having size and being able to skate and so on and so forth. And he's just got to put that together.
Yeah,
right?
I walked away. I walked away thinking exactly what the team had continued and the scouts had told us at that draft, which was I saw potential for him to play any type of defenseman that they want him to play.
Yes.
But that he has to play bigger and play stronger to get to that point. And he's a year 2 away. And again, none of that's a knock, because to me, he still looks great. He still looked like easily one of the best defensive prospects that we have. And again, especially since you pointed Cagnoni, to me, I'm excited for. He's a little bit smaller. He's a little bit more of a stretch to make it, but he, to me, wasn't anywhere near as visible. Sam Dickinson was other than Paul Camp, who was visible because he was playing forward, was the most visible defenseman. The other thing that I don't quite agree with is I don't necessarily think Krona had a bad game. I was not impressed by any of the goaltenders in that prospect scrimmage.
But my point is, Krona kept the game in a place where it looked like Teal was going to dominate. Right?
Yes.
Like he made the saves he needed to make.
He was the best of the goalies there, but I was not wowed. I thought the other goaltenders looked awful.
Yeah, they did. They all looked bad. I mean, but they're also put in a really shitty position because this is a fucking arcade game they put together.
Yep.
And Krona is the guy who didn't break under the arcade game format. And I think that says something good.
Yeah, I don't think he was terrible. Just to be clear, I wasn't wowed by any of them. And it's interesting because when I look at their goaltending pipeline, as you guys know, 2 seasons ago I was talking up Krona, and excited about him, and I still am to an extent. I don't think they really have figured out their goaltending pipeline yet at all. I don't think they really know exactly. Like, this is one of those areas where I think they still don't really know what they do or do not have, and you know that by the fact that we're going to have a tandem this year of Blackwood and what Vanacek, right? Because they brought Vanacek in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I think 2 areas of the Sharks, the Sharks organization that need to. I'm not worried about the forward core at all right now. Future of the forwards are bright. to me. Like, yes, well, you need a couple more to fill in, but we have some exciting prospects there too who can kind of, fill those voids in the next couple of years, hopefully. Defensive side, you got to figure out a way to get better turnover there. Yeah, you've got 2 or 3 maybe prospects that are getting close to ready. Okay, but that still needs a lot of work. And to me, I like Blackwood, so it's not a knock on Blackwood, but I don't think they know what they're doing in the goaltending side yet. I think they have a great goaltending coach. I'm hoping that helps, sort that since he's coming back, because I think he did a great job. But those are the areas. The defensive side is what is ultimately, when you're looking at the next 2 years, I know people are excited. Sharks are probably not going to be super great next year.
They're going to be bad.
Maybe
they're going to be more entertaining.
Maybe there could be a surprise if Will Smith and Macklin are even better than we think at this young age, where they lift things up a little bit more than we're expecting. But in general, the back side of the ice, the defensive end, is still letting this organization down. The organization needs to figure that out, and they are making moves, especially on defense, to do it. Again, Wallman coming in, taking the sit in the draft, stuff like that. Cagnoni signing, but that's still a ways away compared to the forward core, which I think is going to mature very rapidly.
Well, so let's all remember as hockey fans that Niemi won a cup because the defense in front of him was awesome. Hill won a cup because the defense in front of him was awesome.
Hill played pretty well.
Hill stole a couple games.
Yeah.
That's one thing Niemi never did. But Hill was also 3 inches taller than Niemi. So did he, whatever, but the defense in front of the tender is the thing that's more important. And we have no defense. We are going to get lit the fuck up this season, but we are going to be so much more fun to watch. And I want to be wrong with Celebrini, but I think he's going to be like Peterson in Vancouver, where there's going to be moments of just sheer brilliance, but his size and adjustment to the league is going to be very noticeable.
I'm not worried about Celebrini at all.
No, me either. Well, so one more thing to talk about this podcast, and I think it's one of the elephants in the room. I think what you're going to see, just because of his eligibility, I think you're going to see Musty get his 9 games, and then they'll have to figure stuff out. But in general, this training camp is going to be real interesting, because you got a couple players who are starting more and more to look like potential odd men out. Bordeleau and Gushin are probably the 2 that you're going to see bandied about the most as trade candidates and other stuff. I don't, I think size is probably what's holding them back. I think Bordeleau proved already that he is an NHL player. I think Gushin has proved in the AHL that he is worth a really serious NHL look. But again, they have a lot of guys and not that many spaces there. So what do you guys think about the situation going into camp? Yeah, it's super positive. We're excited. We think it's going to be a fun season. Even if the Sharks suck, it's going to be a fun season in general, way more fun than the last couple. It should hopefully be a much more coherent season, especially with a coach coming in and having some of these young players to work with immediately, the player skill being just, overall better. But going into camp, what are you guys really looking for?
I mean, I'm looking for a whole bunch of trays to get rid of some of this dead weight. Here's the thing that I think we would all like to see, but we're not going to get. I would love to see Gushin and Bordeleau as a fourth line energy line, putting up some depth points.
Agree.
For this team. I don't know who I'd put on the right side with them. Maybe that's where you shove Goodrow. I don't know, but Sturm, actually, you put Sturm on the 4th line centering Bordeleau and Gushin. Fuck yes, give me that 4th line for energy and some depth scoring. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
but we're not going to get it. As we've said, Bordelo's too small, Gushin's too small. This team wants big, hard to knock off the puck bodies.
One thing.
I'm actually.
Can I point out one thing?
I'm expecting to be sad.
Can I point out one thing? And this is something that Greer has said, and I don't necessarily think that Greer is wrong, but I don't fully agree either. When Greer was asked about bringing people in, because he was asked a lot about that this summer, especially around the draft, especially with Celebrini, sort of being like bringing more guys in for Celebrini. One of the things that Greer pointed out was just this idea that they're not quite yet in the position where you're pushing all your chips in, right? That they want another year or so to continue to build to get to that point where they can go, all right, now we're making these, big deals that are going to, put us over the edge because the team itself is mature and ready for it. So I think they're probably another, I think the timetable he gave was like something between, 2 and 3 years. He noted he didn't want to sign anyone for more than 4 at a max. So I think that's where he is. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for the Sharks, both Warzy and Greer, to put their money where their mouth is in terms of the actual competition. If we get into camp and Musty's playing the way that he was playing in that prospect scrimmage, and he has that same level of chemistry against, better players at camp. If we see guys like Bordeleau and Gushin have good camps, then they should get starts over other players. And if they don't get starts over other players, I think a couple of things. I think if Bordeleau and Gushin can't crack the roster this year, I don't have a lot of faith that their time here in Teal is long. Whether or not it should be, I just don't think the organization at that point will be displaying enough, faith in those guys. And yeah, Gushin's still young. I get it, but I think the organization for those two guys, it's a little bit of a shit or get off the pot. But what I want to see a system starting to form. I want to see much, much better. A lot of this is coaching. I want to see much better adjusting in preseason in other scenarios. I want to see better line management, roster management as a whole. And I'm looking to see those fringe guys versus those guys we pulled in that we've just said are, fourth line guys likely at best. Who actually gets that spot? That's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to.
I think Gushin and Bordy are going to get packaged up, sent to a team like Chicago for someone like Connor Murphy. And
You've been trying to trade Bordeleau for a year, man.
I know.
because I can look at the height chart. Like, let's face it. Greer keeps saying tough to play against. And like, while Bordy has gotten even better at surviving in the NHL and like keeping his head on a swivel, finding space, making great smart passes, being part of the play, back skating, which is something he didn't really get many examples of from the team last year. Like he's the wrong frame, and Gushin is the same. And I don't think these guys are gonna get that fair shake because I feel it's like Greer brings in another 6'1" player and immediately calls Bordy up, just be like, "Hey kid, have you grown 2 inches? No, cool." Like,
I agree. That's why that's the number one thing that I'm actually looking to at camp, because I don't really, in my mind, have a lot of question marks about who should and shouldn't be on the roster, at least for the first 9 games of the season. Now, again, people will come in surprised, right? You don't really know till you get to camp. But there are a bunch of players to me that I'm trying to figure out. Do the Sharks believe that this is part of these guys are part of the future core, or do they not believe they're part of the future core? Do they believe they're part of the future core in the next season or two, or do they think they're further out? Those I think are the key decisions they need to be making.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my perspective now. So first of all, I don't think Celebrini or Smith is going to play center.
No, me either.
I
Wings.
think they're both going to. The Sharks clearly in free agency focused on getting either of these guys another shot with Toffoli coming in, but they also focused on centers, right? So Wenberg comes in to be a center when they've already got so many centers. A plethora of centers, right? So
they love centers and they love making them wings.
So the way I look at it is you've got Granlund probably in Wenberg and Sturm, and then maybe on a game-to-game basis, Celebrini and Smith maybe play a little bit of time at center, but I think they're going to play most of their time at wing, which is fine. You want to try to give these guys opportunities to get some confidence, pile up points. And center's really hard to play at the NHL level, particularly if you're still, growing and you're still, adding weight, what have you. So That's one thing I expect to see. I think that I don't disagree with your reads on what the Sharks are thinking with Bordelot and Gushin. I certainly disagree with what they're thinking.
Agree.
I think that Gushin is exactly the kind of guy you want on an energy line paired
Mhm.
with larger players, because the guy can just score. And not just he's not just shot focused like a guy like Haltonen. The guy can create. He's shifty. Honestly, he's probably a better prospect at this point than Bordelot. And if we had to pick the two guys, one of those two guys is survivor and the other one gets traded, I'd rather have Gushin probably in the long run. Sad to say. I'd like ideally
Don't be
I'd have
shocked to see
I'd have
another
both.
move.
Ideally I'd have both, but this is a team that is loaded up on mediocre forwards. I mean, Kunin, Kostin, Sturm, Granstrom's
Giovanni
maybe.
Smith.
And again, I'm going to say this. I know you guys are shocked by this, but I feel like fourth liner guy that should be maybe getting some time just because he's slightly better than the other options is Smith. But
Oh, I think he's better than Kunin.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do too.
everybody's
I
better
just
than Kunin.
I just think that there are better players in general who could be in the fourth line.
So
Yep.
to me, so the locks for day one roster are obviously Toffoli, Granlund, Wenberg, sadly Goodrow, Cunnin. I'm not.
Eklund?
Well, hold on. I'm
Eklund.
going through the list, guys. So
okay.
Sturm, Grunstrom, Zetterlund, probably Delandry. I'm guessing, given that they brought him over. Obviously, Celebrini and Smith. My question, and Eklund. There you go. He's there.
I know
Are
it's
you
just
happy?
weird that you got like Kunin and the other guys first.
Well, no, I'm going. Look, that's the order in which they are listed in Cap Friendly to put the cards on the table. Here we are. Bailey's probably at the AHL level. I don't know what they do with Smith, but he's probably fringe at this point. Not Will Smith, obviously. Giovanni Smith.
Yeah.
Colin Graff is another question mark I have because that was a really smart pickup based on what he did in college and what that leads to his projections being. And I hope they realize what they have there, right? I hope he is on the opening day roster, but I would not be shocked to see him end up going down to the AHL level,
Agree.
being the lost man, particularly if Musty just blows people away like we're kind of expecting he will. So that, to me, there are 7 guys who should be absolute locks to be forwards on day one on this team that are already on the roster, right? Toffoli, Granlund, Wenberg, Zetterlund, Celebrini, and Smith, and Eklund, right? That's the 7. So everybody else is playing for 5 spots to me. And that includes, if this is a world in which we take Greer by his word that you have to earn it, then Cunnin, Kostin, Sturm, Grandstrom, Delandria, Smith, Giovanni Smith, Bordelot, and Graff are all playing for those 5 spots. And then that's not even accounting for, Gushin, Musty, and Haltonen, Bistad, Edstrom, and this, and again, here we see the problem.
I think if they,
Yep.
I think if they really, that was one of the telling signs to me about how I think they're going to handle Musty. I think they're going to let him do his 9 games, and then because of his age, again, he's not AHL. You can't put him on the AHL yet, so
Right.
it's either NHL or not. And I think regardless of how they feel or like, again, if you listen to Greer makes it clear that he thinks they're 2 or 3 seasons really out here. So in his mind, there is time to get guys like Musty up, and that this year, even though we have Smith and Celebrini coming up, it's still very much an interim year within this rebuild. So an exciting one, but it's an interim year. So the second that they started filling those spots, my initial thought was they don't really intend on bringing Musty up to the NHL beyond his 9 games.
I think I agree with you.
They probably don't really believe intend on bringing Gushin up to the NHL, this year. Again, these guys could have stellar camps and that could change things. But again, Musty had a great camp last year. He really did have a good camp last year.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
So yeah, we're all aligned. Is there anything else that I'm missing that we're looking forward to discovering at camp? Is there anything?
I would like to see Makhmudulin seize a spot.
Great. I can't believe we went the whole podcast and didn't mention him. Yeah, but because again, defense is another one of those areas where there's not. If you look at it,
Yeah,
from an
I think
actual pipeline.
I think he's ready.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yep.
and I think it'll be a lot of fun. But he's also got to get around guys like Vlasic, Ferraro, Ruda. You know, who Benning's still there. Yeah, Burrows was.
Yeah,
only
but
one
Benning's
yeah.
a righty or righty at least. So, like Benning and Emberson, who they are looking to bring back. Emberson, they're going to arbitration on, are both rights, so that's good. To me, I'm more worried about Thrun because you know you've got Wallman's obviously a lock. Ferraro, they very clearly are trying to move Ferraro because he just keeps showing up in like he could be traded.
Please trade him.
You know, Ruda should be fired into the sun. Vlasic is going to stick around to be the new captain when Couture's dead body washes up ashore.
If Vlasic plays, listen, Vlasic last year played a lot more steady than he had the last couple of years.
He's been fine.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, you know, you've got, you know, Thrun, Ferraro, Wallman, and Vlasic are all left D, and then so is Makhmudulin, right?
Yep.
I think to our ideal would be that two of those three that is playing left D on day one is Makhmudulin and Wallman, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then Thrun. So what do you do with the other guys?
Do you know why? Do you know why Vlasic isn't going anywhere?
Because he can play the right.
No,
because Jumbo and Patty are back.
No, and don't say no movement clause. It's not that either. It's the Sharks need him for the cap floor.
Yeah.
If you move him, you got to bring back equal value, and you're not going to do it across multiple players because again, that you don't have the space for that. So to me, like anyone who's like, well, maybe they can get him to waive, they actually don't want him to.
Yeah.
They need his salary on the books.
Yeah.
Well, it's why we need Couture to actually come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit like that's the thing. That's the one thing that you always got to keep in mind is there is the skill and playability, but there's still the business side of it as well. You know, part of the reason why the Sharks are so excited about Smith and Celebrini is not just their play. They're gonna be like their season tickets are already up again. Like, you know, tickets were so bad the last 2 years that I was winning every contest I entered through the Sharks website because they were just giving tickets away. Now they have that to market, right? So they have some marketable players, and then you have the cap situation, which again, like they need to be at the floor. It's bounced up. It's going to bounce up more next year, and they don't have those big contracts on the books yet. And you know, again, when you've got guys like Smith and Macklin, look, that's going to get expensive at some point, but that's three or 4 years out, right? More than that, really. So, you know, you do have to look at that too. There are certain players that are going to be on this roster strictly because they're occupying money, you know, and they can't move them for something that's going to give them equal, and they can't keep bringing in 3 for 1. Doesn't work that way with the number of contracts you're allowed to have.
I totally agree with you. I just think that, you know, you can have him on the roster and he can be sitting in the press box.
Yeah.
I think ideally, like I'm not actually arguing for moving Vlasic at this point.
Yeah,
it would be much better to get Ferraro off the roster to clear out that jam. Or I mean, the problem is that Ruda also needs to not be playing.
Well,
I guess the flexibility though is that both Vlasic and Ruda have played the other side, their offhand. I mean, poorly, but they can do it. So
the theory with Ferraro being moved is that in theory, teams are dumb enough to give you something of value back versus something like Ruda where you're not getting anything back from value. I mean, honestly, what I would have done if possible is Ruda's one of those guys that I would have, hey, Detroit and everyone's giving us stuff for nothing. We can't give someone else him for nothing. I don't understand.
We've got some future considerations we'd be interested in if you could go and find those in the couch.
I'll give you I'll give you all the future considerations if you take him off our hands.
I'll throw in a 6th rounder.
What would you like me to consider? Yeah, exactly. You do the Detroit. You pull Detroit and give. I'd be like, how many draft picks would you like?
Oh, let's not go that far.
But I mean, this sort of brings us back around to next year's draft and what the aim is there. I like, you know me, I love the wild, insane headcanon nonsense. I think Kunin's still on this team because he makes people laugh during a loss and he looks good to players who don't care, or to fans who don't care about results. Because let's face it, Kunin is like the nearly there player. Oh, he nearly got it on that. Oh, he nearly got that check. Oh, he nearly made that pass. Like, you get to feel that, like, all of if he just gets that one thing, he'll be great.
Yeah, Celebrini.
Well, no, but that's the thing. Celebrini passing the Kunin, so it's gonna be amazing pass. Nothing.
Yeah, wait,
Amazing pass.
until you
Nothing.
realize that Kunin can't actually handle Celebrini's pass.
Actually, Celebrini has a clause in his contract that says that it is illegal for the Sharks to put Cunnin on his line because he's really smart.
But-
Guys, I just noticed something amazing. The Sharks
What?
have traded away every one of their third round picks for the next 3 years.
Yeah,
They know about the
it's
curse, you
nuts.
guys. They've become self-aware.
Well, and listen, I want to take that into the 3 stars, and I want to go first because my first,
God damn it.
I'm gonna do this in reverse. My first star is actually Chris Morehouse and his scouting staff. I thought they
Yeah.
had a phenomenal draft. This was all their draft. They did a great job. They value things in a great way. To your point, Ben, are there a couple of picks I might have made differently? Yeah, but do I think they were far off with them?
No.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So I want to give those guys credit. Their interview, they also did an interview. I think Shang has it on his website. I thought it was
Mhm.
great. My second star, I'm going to give to Greer for obvious reasons. I think he did a tremendous job of making sure that Macklin Celebrini signed, because I do believe that Macklin Celebrini was a little unsure. I think the way that he and the organization handled this last week in particular, I thought was excellent. He did a great job of getting fans excited. His press conferences were great. They were honest. They were revealing. I got a kick out of him calling out Shang and the coaching hire, when Shang asked like reports about you doing, looking at Sturm as a finalist, and Mike Greer goes, "You mean your report?" I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then my there's a lot of guys that could really get the 3rd star here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to the 2 most obvious ones, right? And that's Will Smith,
Jumbo and Marlowe? Oh.
No, actually, so it's going to be Will Smith and Celebrini for obvious reasons, and especially since they both decided to go pro and are working together. I really like that. But you know what? I am going to give an honorary star to guys like Joe, Marlowe, Ricci, Nabby. We saw Ryan Close, an assistant GM now, and I'll tell you why. What I find amazing is, if you asked me a year ago what I thought about the Sharks just hiring ex-Sharks, I was very vocal about, like, I like these guys too, but like, can we get guys with maybe more experience in these positions? What I saw this offseason so far, though, that I actually didn't realize I was going to see or appreciate, is how the old guard is really working hard to usher the new guard in. And there's something about, you don't see that in a lot of organizations, not to this extent, where there are so many former star players from the team that couldn't get it done there, that are sitting there, and they are like, Jumbo is the head of Vibes,
Director of Vibes.
Greer had an interview where he was like, at some point I'm going to have to lock that guy down and actually pay him something, but like it's and I could see that. We went to the last AHL game of the season and all those guys were up there. There's just something really cool about all of the fan favorites really caring about to me, what it shows is everyone who touches this franchise really cares about the franchise. And that is not something that you get everywhere in the same way, and especially not in a market that is a non-traditional market. So I think it's really cool, and I'm glad that you brought those up. Who wants to go next with their 3 stars?
I'll go. Yeah, I'll throw a star to Morehouse and Fitzgerald, because I mean, before this draft, you asked me who these people were, I wouldn't have known. But their interview was great. Everything they had to say about how they're looking at this team and looking at when they felt like the team was going to start being competitive again tempered my own expectations. And yeah, best draft ever, or best draft so far, let's say, which has me really excited for next draft, because it's like, oh boy, we're definitely drafting top 10 again. So let's see. And then second star, I'm going to throw my second star to, Patty and Thornton, and even like Ricci and Nabokov, and I mean Marchand, Todd Marchand, and fucking Chloe, all the old boys. Because it makes me happy to see that. It makes me feel old watching Thornton give passes to the kids. Makes me feel so old, but it's also super cool. And even like Vlasic, when he becomes part of the player player support staff and is teaching Dickinson how to be the ultimate shutdown player. Who I'm going to be so here for that, because Dickinson skating is amazing, and you combine that skating with Vlasic's just understanding of how to shut down top players. That's a great thing. Let's see. First star. Yeah, first star goes to the kids like Smith, Musty, and Celebrini, because if I get to be as surprised as I want to be by Celebrini, man, it's going to be so much fun to watch this team this year. Like there's going to be so many good moments and just fun goals and fun plays. So like it's so much better from last season.
Ben, you're up. I know you hate this, but there's reason to be optimistic. This is the most optimistic you've been.
I know. I mean,
New Ben.
it's a different world than the Sharks have ever been in before, right? They've never gotten the first overall pick, and they got the first overall pick in a year where the guy who was available has at the the sort of junior and then college level done things that suggest the possibility that we got another generational player, which is incredible. And then you back that up with last year they got Will Smith, who is looking like he's going to develop into the star that we need him to be. And there's a lot to be optimistic about. And so what I want to do is I want to give my first star to Mike Greer. And I know that everybody is shocked by that, but I want to add on to all of the things we talked about that he did, I think, well in putting together the coaching staff, putting together the scouting staff and the draft and all that stuff. He also, I can't argue with the decisions he made in terms of who to tender in RFA except Cunnin, but they're all, I don't know what Cunnin has done, but they're all mesmerized by Cunnin. So we'll leave that aside. But, the guys we moved on from both of the UFA and RFA level, I largely agree with, right?
Yeah.
I'm sad to see Barabanov go. I'm actually surprised he hasn't signed anywhere yet. Not sad to see Carpenter go. Not sad to see Hoffman go. Not sad to see late model Kevin Labanc go. Not sad to see Lindblom go. Not sad to see McDonald go, and so on and so forth. Right? He made the right decisions. Jacob Peterson, Jack Studnicka, even Philip Zadina. I think that was a reasonable flyer. It didn't work out, and you've got to logjam it forward, move on. Right? And I think the Wenberg signing and the Toffoli signing are both great. It's an incomplete first star, let's call it, because I want to see what happens with some of these other bodies that shouldn't be around. But I'm encouraged. Yeah.
On the whole, lucky versus good topic.
Oh yeah.
Well, so here's my question.
Yes.
Does Greer understand that fans can't handle the truth?
Look, I think Greer is maybe the ideal combination of lucky and good. I think he is lucky as fuck, right? So first of all, to get to that point, right? Last year they end up with the draft slot that turns into Quentin Musty. It didn't have to turn into Quentin Musty. They could have made the wrong pick there, right? That's a combination of lucky to end up with that slot from the trade, and then did the right thing with it. Same thing with Dickinson, right? Like there's a lot of different things they could have done with pick 14. And moving up 11 spots to get a very, very, very good defenseman prospect is good, right? So luck that Pittsburgh sucked enough to give them another lottery pick.
Come on, Vegas, time to explode.
Right? And again, so I fully expect, actually, given how lucky Greer is to get into the right position, that Vegas is going to suck next year. They're going to be terrible. And so the Sharks will end up with another top 15. And then it's, again, like do you have the right process in place? And I'm actually, on the draft side, I am maybe for the first time in my life, reasonably confident that the Sharks will do the right thing with a given draft pick. It's crazy. Or I should say, do a right thing, because they're not doing exactly what I would do. I would have picked Zeev Buliam, for example. But they're making decisions within the realm of, the best possible player, which is so different from the era of Tim Burke. Great. So yeah, first star, Mike Greer. He seems to be learning. He's evolving. He's making a lot of good choices. He even he won his first trade outright, guys. He got Wallman and a second rounder for nothing.
Yeah, pretty good.
But my point is, because he keeps, like he was saying, I'm not signing anybody for more than a couple of years.
Which is, I think, the right call.
But he's not saying the next part, which is because this rebuild is still just in
No, he said
square
that.
one.
He said that.
Like, did he?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he did
he's
that
like-
he's been that very clear.
I think he has set expectations that are reasonable for what this team is going to be.
Yes.
And in part reasonable because they keep making mistakes on guys like Cunnin. But again, like, look, it
But then
net-
is that a mistake? That's
It
my
is.
point. Is
Uh,
Cunnin actually
but-
a mistake, or is that
The
Are
future
they
is
tagging?
teal, guys.
Are-
The future is
are
teal.
you asking if the Cunnin signing is part of a clever ploy to continue tanking this year?
exactly?
Yes,
Is
I
the
think so.
logjam
The-
logjam there to make the kids
I-
work and to make sure the team sucks?
The marketing tells you what's going on. The future is teal,
Yeah.
not the present.
Yeah.
The future. And that is how the organization's looking at it. That's how Greer's looking at it again. They get it.
Yeah.
But like for the average fan, the future is tomorrow.
No, well, I mean, and I think if you actually listen to what Greer and others are saying, what they're doing is they're trying to make you excited for the near-ish future, but they're also making it very clear that is the near-ish future. That is not right now.
Look, I think we all agree. No matter what the Sharks did, whether Gushin and Boards are playing at the NHL level along with Musty or not, this team's still real bad, right? Like, not bad in like a depressing way, but like you still need those guys who have been drafted over the last 2 to 3 years to develop to become what this team wants to be in 3 or 4 years, right? Like
Right.
Celebrini and Smith are going to be, I think, great players, but you can't win with just 2 great players, right? There's
I mean, the Oilers keep trying.
no, they to be fair to the Oilers,
Yeah, they've got a
they
decent squad.
have a number of stars alongside Connor McDavid. Their problem is that their third and fourth lines have always been awful, and then
Yeah.
their defense has been bad. And thank God they signed Corey Perry. Otherwise they might have a Stanley Cup, right? That guy. My third star, by the way, is to Corey Perry for torpedoing 4 straight teams in the Stanley Cup final itself. My second star, let me just get it out there, is to all of the former Sharks players who are making this,
Yep.
making that push on Greer's behalf to get Celebrini to sign,
Yeah.
to make this a place where people want to be, because that's really hard, right?
Yeah,
One of the things
taxes are tough here.
yeah, we've talked about this for years, that it's really hard to get free agents to come to San Jose because it's expensive compared to some of the other places you could live, like Florida or Texas, right? Taxes are brutal, cost of living is brutal.
Yeah. You
and
make
so
less.
They
You
need
gotta
that
understand that.
yeah,
Yeah.
they need that extra oomph of what Greer's clearly doing, is just trying to turn the team into a family, an
I
extended
just
family.
realized something. I just realized something I want.
Okay.
I need Thornton to be either behind the bench or like in the press box,
Mhm.
and I need one of the kids to score 5 goals.
It was only 4 goals to
Yeah.
get to the Rooster trick.
Oh, I thought it was 5.
No,
No, it was
4.
4. It was when Hurdle scored 4 that he said he'd whip his dick out on the ice
Yeah.
if it had
So
been him.
I'm saying we've got to have that moment in Sharks lore.
I agree, and I think the key is exactly what you said, Ben, and that is that they are making it a family. And
Yeah.
if you look at what the old core was and why we love them,
Yeah.
that was a huge part of it. And so to be able to
Yeah.
do that with a new generation, and you see the new generation also embracing it,
Yeah.
is huge.
I agree. I think that it's the more that Greer can get that without handing out actual like paid positions to guys, though, the better, right? Because
Yeah.
because you do run into possible issues of, are these guys actually good at the jobs they've been handed within the organization? I think the Jumbo situation is great because that guy's like, dude, I made my money. I don't give a shit, and I love this team, and I love you, Greer. So let's go. The more of the guys you can get to kind of be happy with that, the better.
Yeah.
And getting actual like guys like Warsofsky, who have a background in whatever role. And I don't say that to shit on Klo at all, because Klo has spent the last few years in operations at least, right? So there's nothing wrong, I think, with bringing him into the team here. And he did some coaching before, his concussions and, his post-play problems kind of forced him out of it. I just, there's a balance here between like full-on nepotism and building a family. And I think I think the encouraging thing we saw here is what the upside can be
Yeah.
when you make it the family thing.
Yeah.
Because I think Celebrini was going back to school.
I did.
in
I
over the
kind of
last
think he was
couple years.
leaning that way too, and I think it was very much based. I think his decision was going to be very much based off of that the end of that experience, and I think
Yeah.
they just did the right thing.
I mean, I think Smith coming out was a part of maybe making Celebrini think about it, but I think it did take having Jumbo be the guy who basically picked him at the draft, right, and gave him that uniform, and then everything Greer orchestrated around that. I would think without that he's playing for
including one key thing that we didn't talk about,
which is
the ref keeping his whistle in the pocket at the very end of that scrimmage. Because technically that comeback doesn't happen if that's officiated correctly.
Hey, let's be honest here.
You know,
that was
Greer
some of
was
the
like
best officiating I've seen in an NHL game my entire life.
I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I would not be shocked if the going up 7-2 and everything was the goaltenders had earpieces. Everyone had earpieces in there. Can I?
I think to that point, I think again, like the prospect scrimmage doesn't tell us a lot about what these guys are going to look like at the NHL level, but it was fun as shit to watch.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
That the format is stupid. I don't think they should do it that way, but if they're going to do it, at least it was fun.
Can I throw out a controversial?
This period was great.
Can we end this on this podcast on a drunken off-season controversial take?
Okay.
Are you guys ready for this?
Are you drunk?
No, but I'm drunk on the excitement of the off season. I'll put it that way. It's like 1 o'clock here. I'm dehydrated. That's this. I think there's a chance that the Sharks may have been better off not landing Bedard in this instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got two players that are the type of player they needed more than the super awesome player in general. And I think, and it'll be real interesting to see how that plays out. Not in a comparison to Chicago specifically, because they're different organizations. Yeah. But I think Macklin and his personality and his work ethic and his leadership, and Will Smith in the same boat, I think we lucked out at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong. Would I love to have Bedard yet? Absolutely. But I think the Sharks got the guys they needed to. And I think it's going to make a very big difference to this club being good more across the lineup than just, stuck on a line.
Well, so far in hockey history, Blackhawk star forwards who get their jaw broken and then play at the fishbowl tend to end up being my least favorite players of all time. So let's see what happens with Bedard. I don't know about that yet. I've liked Bedard.
That's why it's a hot take.
So here's my take on this. I think the Blackhawks fucked up their second overall pick this year. I think they should have taken Demidov, and they'd be better off for it. And I think if the Sharks had been in the position to do Bedard Demidov, that's maybe just as good as what they got to me. But I think there's nothing wrong with Smith and then Celebrini, because I think Celebrini is going to be the same kind of player as Bedard and maybe slightly more durable.
Sure.
So I don't think you're in bad shape either with what the Sharks got, or if you did the right thing with the second pick overall this year and took Demidov there. Personally, I think I don't want to. I can't argue that you're wrong, Alex. I think it's a great way for it to work out. I wonder if the Sharks would have had trouble, getting second overall with Bedard.
I think Bedard was the player we wanted. I think Macklin and Smith are the players we actually needed, and I think that's more my point. I think when you look at where this team was, just an emotional level, and what they needed not just one guy, but two guys with this mindset, this work ethic, this excitement, and all of this. And I don't, and to be very clear, and this isn't knocking other guys at all, but just the personality of Will Smith and Celebrini. Not every good player has that. Doesn't make them bad. Doesn't necessarily make Celebrini and Smith magically good, but to have the combo of skill that those guys have, and to have the mindset and the personality they do.
Yeah, I agree.
The organization cannot ask for anything better, especially again in a non-hockey market where you got to be competing with a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
Now you got two guys who look like they're going to be a lot of fun. And that is why the future is teal, folks. We're a positive cast again. I know.
I mean, we
So-
lived through an era where that really talented guy had no personality whatsoever, and
Yeah.
had a reputation for choking.
Oh.
Patrick Marlowe. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather not repeat that.
Yeah. Well, listen, that concludes maybe our mid-off season podcast, I guess. Probably won't pod again until maybe camp or preseason a little bit closer, unless something major happens or a cluster of major things happen. We don't like to waste your time just giving immediate hot takes that go away the next day. But there are no games, so to speak. Camp and preseason
Mind
starts in
games.
September. Camp preseason starts in September. There's a lot to look forward to. Highly recommend. I was just at Sharks Ice. I was skating on Sharks Ice yesterday, coincidentally, when the Celebrini text came in, and it made me pull my back, which was a great experience. But I listen. If you're in the area and you really want to get sucked into stuff, I highly encourage you go to the open practices and stuff as they're there. That's a great facility. It is a lot of fun. It's a good time out. You do a public skate. You watch them. Sharks, you watch some other games going on, some figure skating. It's great. It's an awesome facility. I wish it was up further up the peninsula where I am. But lots to look
Do they
forward
still
to.
have the delicious cancer nachos?
Oh, yeah. My buddy got those the other day, actually.
Oh, those
And
things
they,
are
have,
so good.
and they have Calders now, so they have a second location in there as well. They expanded. We will be back. You can check this podcast out on the Apple Podcast app, where you can rate it 5 stars, leave feedback. We'll listen to it. I just called someone out for saying we did a therapy session, and now we're like, yeah, because we sucked. That was necessary. Android people, figure it out, or go to Spotify. You can check us out on the web at circlingthecup.com. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/circlingthecup, where we just post when we're going to be live. You can check us out on the Twitters it's at
Circling the Cup.
Yeah, I know. That's all Ben. I'm now locked out of it. You can check it out. We have a Discord as well, which we can kind of try to leave up somewhere periodically. It's a great community, a lot of awesome people who are having fun conversations about stuff. Highly encourage that as well. And of course, you can always write us and ask questions. We're always looking for stuff to talk about, especially in slower weeks. I would not be shocked if we pod more this season. We used to pod weekly. We didn't do that the last couple of years because there really wasn't enough to talk about, but there's a lot to be excited about this year. So definitely get your questions in. That's not a commitment, but definitely get your questions in. We love talking about it. We love talking hockey. We love our community. Say goodbye, guys.
I don't know what to say anymore. I'm so happy.
Bye-bye.
Colin's just like, I'm not saying shit.
Bye-bye. Awesome. That was fun, guys.
Yeah.
Woo, I'm so excited about the Sharks now.
Oh my God.